Okay, let's move on to a question from Dave Barnes in Richmond, Virginia. Hey, Mary Kate, from what you've experienced with the guys on the roster so far, which players do you think can step up and take some of that vocal leadership that's been lacking in the past? I know Jim Schwartz will hold the D accountable and Bubba Ventrone will keep special teams in check, but it always seems to be more meaningful when leadership comes from the players' peers.
Yeah, I think so too. I think player leadership is vitally important. I remember asking Mike Singletary, the Hall of Fame linebacker from the Bears, about the Bears winning the Super Bowl. And he said player leadership was the key. That was the 100% key. Talent doesn't get you there. You've got to have so many other things. And that was the number one thing he cited. And that really stuck with me. And I really do think that they've added some better leaders to the team this year, or at least some vocal leaders. So one of those is Zadarius Smith. I think Zadarius Smith is going to really be a leader on that defensive line. You could already see it during minicamp that he just has a very strong presence. He's very engaging. He's very interactive with his teammates. I think he's one. I think Juan Thornhill is another. I think in some ways, he's a lot like John Johnson 3 in that regard. Very vocal, very interactive. You just know he's out there. So I think Juan Thornhill will play that role. I think Rodney McLeod, he's a little bit quieter, but he will play that role just based on the fact that he has been to a Super Bowl and he's played for Jim Schwartz for 5 years. Mike Ford is a run through the wall kind of guy on special teams. I think that he's going to bring some much needed leadership to that aspect of the game. And then, we've talked a lot about how this is a very quiet receiving core. And it is a very quiet receiving core, but I think they added some guys now with a little bit of flair to them. I think Elijah Moore has a little something to him like that. I think Marquise Goodwin, as you mentioned, has a little something to him. Cedric Tillman, even though he's young, once he gets the lay of the land, I think he'll probably be a little bit more vocal than some of what we have seen in that room so far. So these are some of the guys. Obo Okoronkwo is a very vocal player. So I think you're going to see some things this year in terms of guys rallying the troops that we haven't seen as much in previous years.
Ultimately, when it comes to player leadership, how important is it that the best players kind of embrace those roles too? I mean, we know the quarterback just has to be a leader. You can't be a franchise quarterback and not be a leader. That's just not possible. But so obviously Deshaun Watson, but like a guy like Miles Garrett, Denzel Ward, uh, Amari Cooper, some of the guys who are like the best in it, Joel Batonio has I think established himself as a guy who's a leader. Just the guys who are like the best in their rooms. How important is it for those guys to kind of take that on as well?
I think it's very, very important. I really do. I think when you look at a Miles Garrett, that he's got to be one of the best leaders on the team. And Jim Schwartz, when we had his introductory press conference, he talked about that. He said, I intend to have my best players also be my best leaders. He knows how important that is. You want to be able to look up to your best guys and follow their lead and make sure that you're doing the kinds of things that they do to get to Pro Bowls and to help this team get over the hump and get into those playoffs. So I think it's vitally important. The thing about it is, though, not all of those guys are vocal guys. Amari Cooper's not a vocal guy. Denzel Ward, not necessarily a vocal guy. But you don't always have to just be vocal to be a leader. Sometimes you can set the tone with your intensity in practice, with your work ethic. So there are other ways to lead besides, being boisterous and loud. But I think this year now they have a nice mix of some of those kinds of guys, but also guys who you will be able to know that they are out there on the field.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be Jarvis Landry.